What's up, my friends? How's it going? And welcome back to the second episode of our Let's Play series as Alexander with your fellow comrade Summary. In the previous episode, we started out as Alexander in control of course, Macedonia and Epirus and Hellas, of course. We were at war with the Odrysian kingdom to the north, and we managed to fully conquer the province of Thrace, and we are in firm control of the province. Of course, I have gone ahead into the future, played a couple of turns in preparation for an eventual invasion of the Achaemenid Empire. I do not feel that that's necessary to showcase, of course, because that is a lot of boring, turns that will be passed by, basically trying to bolster or consolidate our holdings as well as build up our forces. But I will explain that as I hop into the campaign map of things, of course. So let's just hop right into the campaign map. And before we discuss that, I am going to apologize for the delay. Most of you who do follow my YouTube community posts as well as my own Discord channel, you will know that I was not keeping too well recently, which is why I had to put a stop on releasing videos. And usually, even if I'm not feeling too well, I try my level best to release videos. But of course, there are limitations to that. If I am riddled with a persistent cough, then I can't really record, because I do need my vocal abilities to record a video. And that is, of course, the worst case scenario for me, is losing out on something that I absolutely need to record videos. Apart from that, I did recover a little bit earlier than expected, but I still took a hiatus, so to speak, from releasing videos, because I was actually celebrating my birthday, guys. And what a way to celebrate it, actually looking at 400 likes for the first episode of Alexander, and that's really, really great. And most of you guys know that I don't really monetize this channel. I don't really care for monetizing. I don't really care for subscribers, and I don't really care for likes. But what likes does and what subscribers do is it lets me know, it gives me valuable feedback that the content I'm releasing is entertaining to you guys. And that's actually what keeps me motivated in maintaining this YouTube channel. Of course, I do it solely for the reason of keeping you guys entertained, and of course sharing with you some of my knowledge as well as some of my modding that I contribute towards the Divided Impera team, of course. So it's really for your pleasure, not for any of the sponsors or ads on YouTube or all of that other sort of shenanigans, which I feel unnecessary, and I'm actually grateful that I do not feel the need to monetize this channel, as I am quite blessed in life. However, that being said, of course, another of the reasons why I did delay the release of this video is because every 3 years I kind of pool aside some funds so that I can upgrade my system every once in 3 years to the best in class available at that time period. And I haven't yet upgraded the system because there's a little bit of a unforeseen circumstance in which I need to actually upgrade other components to house the new components. So there is going to be a little bit of delay in that regard. So I have decided to go ahead and release the episode anyways before that happens. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Now, of course, the main focus of this episode is to initiate our invasion of the Achaemenid Empire. Things are not looking good, guys. Of course, you have Nicomedia over here that I have gone ahead and renamed to a Hellenistic name, and I am going to go ahead and keep renaming settlements into their Hellenistic names as I conquer them. But of course, you can see that we are severely outnumbered. We only have 2 armies in the region ready to launch an invasion, and they are not even 2 full stacks. Of course, Alexander himself has Stratos 1 Alexandros, which is a full stack with, of course, some of those unique units available to the Alexander faction with historical characters like Seleucus, Polyperchon, Crateros, and Cletus. Meanwhile, behind him you have Stratos 2 Cassandros, led by Cassander himself. It's not fully built up, but that is in anticipation, of course, of conquering the western half of Anatolia, which consists of the province of Paphlagonia and Pontus, as well as Ionia. You also get access to some unique units in these regions. So definitely I am going to be doing that. As far as economy is concerned, you can see that I'm barely surviving to maintain these 2 armies. I'm making only about 1900 drachma per turn. Of course, I have a very low treasury, but I am in the process of course upgrading my settlements, as you can see over here. Food is looking pretty decent. We're making about 19 food per turn. Public order seems to be kind of stabilized, as most of you who have watched the first episode will know that I was facing public order issues, but I have managed to stabilize that. Apart from that, we even have Stratos 3 Perdiccas that's basically just stationed in Pella. He's not yet recruiting any troops because we cannot sustain the upkeep cost for such troops, but he is just stationed in Pella. He's going to try to kind of level up as much as he can, and one of the most important general skills to level up is of course the military logistician, because it does give that whopping minus 15% upkeep for all land units, which is really important. That really helps with the army upkeep cost. Now if you take a look at of course our economy, you can see our army upkeep is 10,000 drachma per turn. Of course 15% of that is going to be 1500 denarii, and if you add 1500 denarii to this net income, you can see that our net income almost doubles. So that's just how important that is. Apart from that, of course, Thracia is going to be our main economic province. For now, it's not entirely specialized, and that is because of course we are trying to counteract our food situation. We have focused on building fishmongers instead of course trading ports, which are better commercially, so to speak. But we are going to be prioritizing Thracia to be a commercial province. Apart from that, we have several characters that are governing the province. These are going to be our governor generals as well as our admiral governors that are going to be administering the province and trying to improve the economic output of this province. One of my YouTube viewers did mention that my naming convention of these governors is a little bit inaccurate, so I'm going to go ahead and in the end turn actually rename all of this. Previously I used to use Kyrios, which is basically the lord of Thracia, and the subordinates were basically commes, which was counts, but I did at the back of my head know that this was slightly ahistorical because there was no such political office as a count in the classical Hellenistic era. So I'm going to be renaming that to be a little bit more historically accurate. Apart from that, I do use ChatGPT to kind of come up with the actual Greek or Koine Hellenic naming that you can see over here. However, without any further ado, let us go ahead and declare this war against the Achaemenid Empire. It's going to be a pretty uphill battle, to be honest. We are going to be significantly outnumbered. We have barely 2 stacks, and they will have anywhere between 30 to 40 stacks, which is absolutely incredible. In terms of the most difficult campaigns that I have ever played, this ranks right up there in any Total War series, including, of course, we have the Western Roman Empire in Tilla Total War. Apart from that, we do have a fleet somewhere down south over here that was busy exploring the Western Mediterranean, trying to establish as many trade agreements as we possibly can. As you can see, trade is about 30% of our overall income, which is quite sizable. And we really need that in order to keep our economy afloat, especially in the early game where we do not have the ability to specialize some of our provinces. Apart from that, the Navy has returned back into the port of Athens, and we are busy recruiting up some fleets. We will not need a lot of fleets in this campaign, but having a decent fleet is of course a welcome thing. And I'm actually going to go ahead and cancel these 2 additional ships because I don't really need them. Or I might as well, what is the culture in Nicomedia? It's Persian, so I might as well just recruit those fleet units, because I can technically disband them into the port of Nicomedia. Or can I actually reach Nicomedia in this turn? I can't. Alright, so yeah, let's actually just recruit a couple of those units, because we are going to get a lot of money once we eventually attack Nicomedia. We're going to definitely sack and loot the settlement, of course, to gain some income and some treasury. And the purpose of this fleet is twofold. Of course, the main purpose is, of course, not countering the Achaemenid fleets. The Achaemenids do not have any sizable naval threat to us. But more importantly, we're going to be hiring cheap cheap ships that we can disband in newly conquered foreign settlements, giving us crucial Pop 2 class stimulus in that settlement, allowing us to replenish as quickly as possible. However, that being said, let us go ahead and begin our invasion now. Of course, as you can see, I would have preferred if it was a lot easier to attack Nicomedia, but of course we have 4 stacks over here, 2 full stacks, a full garrison in Nicomedia, of course, and you have 2 smaller stacks outside the settlement, of course. So it's going to be really tough to engage them. One of the things you can do is send out 2 armies and completely try to fight this in the field of battle, and that might be very interesting to do so. Another way you can do it is try to operate it as a part-time sort of a thing. And that also might be a little bit helpful. And the way you go about doing that is you actually besiege the settlement of Nicomedia, thereby trapping the garrison and the army that's stationed in Nicomedia, and attack the external armies with another army. Therefore you're limiting the amount of enemy opposition that you're up against. Another thing you could do is actually besiege Nicomedia, and when you actually attack Nicomedia, before attacking the armies outside of Nicomedia, you can actually select the turn off large control large armies, and what that will basically do is that it will allow you to just fight the prioritized army in the settlement of Nicomedia. Since they do have a garrisoned army over here, you're not going to be fighting the garrison of Nicomedia. Instead, you're going to be fighting the 20 stack army over here, and once you defeat them, you actually own Nicomedia. And what that registers is that you have typically won over here. And what that will mean is that all of these armies might disperse because they register a loss in the region. So you actually completely ignore these armies entirely. And I'm actually kind of considering what exactly to do here. Would it be best for me to attack this army isolated, conquer the settlement of Nicomedia, and kind of trap these 3 armies in the region? They will be trapped in this direction over here. Nicomedia is an important choke point. As you can see, no armies can travel from the west towards, of course, Pergamon. And the important thing is to be very strategic and tactical in your invasion of the Achaemenid Empire, especially in this campaign. You have to execute everything to perfection, or else you are soon going to be feeling the impact of your bad decisions. And the way you expand is going to be extremely strategic. So I'm just going to describe that before we go ahead and actually do anything substantial. We're going to take out Nicomedia, then move in a counterclockwise fashion until we link up back in Pessinous, hopefully recruiting up some more armies. While we do so, of course, we're going to be looting our way across the western coast of Anatolia. And the reason we're doing this is we're actually trying to create choke points, because there are going to be a lot of Achaemenid armies over here, guys, a lot. And we're going to try to create choke points and supply lines to keep our troops supplied, and try to deplete enemy troops as much as we can, and creating important choke points so that the enemy can't just easily take out our settlements that we have conquered. So the important choke points in the earlier parts of the battle or the war is going to be Nicomedia. Pessinous is not that important because any army from this region can move across Pessinous and can actually move this way to the west. The only way Pessinous is useful is if you have an army at side, it can really block their movement towards Nicomedia, which isn't a really big deal because that army can just go in the other way, can go towards Gordian and then just go towards Nicomedia regardless. So Pessinous is not extremely strategic, but the 2 most strategically important settlements in the western Anatolian coast is, of course, Nicomedia, because it kind of blocks kind of east to west, and more importantly side, which is kind of covered in the fog of war over here, because side prevents any movement in this direction. Now Nicomedia, while it does prevent this movement over here, it does not prevent this movement or this movement over here, and that actually can be seen if you kind of mouse over the settlement. You can see the red zone of control outside the settlement, and you can see there's just this narrow pass that the enemy can use to move towards Pergamon, but it is a very narrow pass and the enemy might not be able to move that freely, so we are sort of kind of limiting it a little bit. Meanwhile, Pessinous, of course, still has that narrow pass. If Pessinous was placed at this crossroads over here, it would by far be one of the most strategic locations in the entirety of the western Anatolian coastline. Gordian is really crucial because it does have a river over here, and apart from that it does have a decent zone of control, preventing any armies from north and south from trying to move into this weak spot over here. Which means we can typically, if we own Nicomedia, Gordian and side, then we have secured our western portions. But taking over Gordian is not going to be easy. It is a walled settlement and you have quite a lot of armies that try to amass over here, as you will see in the future. However, with that, let's just go ahead and attack the Achaemenid, the mighty Achaemenid Empire, the moment we have all been waiting for, of course, Alexander's invasion of the Achaemenid Empire. We're going to start with Stratos II Cassandros laying siege to Lydian settlement of Nicomedia. Let's go ahead and attack it over there. Meanwhile, I think I'm going to go with the option of Alexander actually attacking this army, and we will have our first major engagement. Of course, 3 armies outside the settlement against our 2 armies. I think it's pretty evenly matched, although of course they outnumber us quite a significant bit. They outnumber us almost 3:2, but we are going to go quick save over here, hop into the battle, and I will see you all in that battle. Alright, welcome to the long anticipated battle, our very first battle against the Achaemenid satrap of Lydia, of course. We have gone ahead and deployed our units. I've kind of skipped the deployment phase because pretty much the battle was 22 minutes, so the first 12 minutes of the battle was basically deployment. And the way I've deployed my units is, of course, I have my Silver Shield Hoplite units. On that right flank, we have our Chalcaspides pikemen forming up into an echelon formation towards our left flank, and of course behind them we have our long-range missile units such as our Grecian archers and our Rhodian mercenary slingers. On our immediate left and right flank we have a couple of Agranian axemen each, and we have all of our Agranian peltas stay on that left flank because that's where they will be able to do the maximum amount of damage against the enemy missile units. Of course, our left and right flank of cavalry is absolutely massive. We have about 6 cavalry units each, with our left flank being commanded by Cassander, and our right flank, of course, commanded by Alexander himself. There he is, as you can see, leading his companion cavalry into the battle. And since we are on the offensive over here, we will have to take the initiative against the enemy army. We have to keep pushing up forward. And the reason we want our echelon formation is so that we can get a maximum of the enemy units to engage us. And here is the real advantage of the echelon formation. As you can see, even though we are a narrow formation and the Achaemenid armies actually outnumber us and they actually stretch from one end of the battlefield to the other battlefield, by forming up in this echelon formation, we are forcing them to basically attack us on a much smaller front and concentrate their forces, in which we can use our hammer and anvil tactics. There you have it. As you can see, I'm starting to perfect or micromanage my echelon formation to be a little bit more in its curvature. The more curvature you have, the more enemy units you can hold at bay. So that is pretty much what I'm trying to do. And as soon as you get within range, you'll start to see the enemy AI is starting to make some forays, starting to move, and that's when you know the battle has kind of commenced. And of course, we are just waiting to see or bide our time to understand when and how exactly we can charge into this enemy unit. We're starting to notice some cavalry units straying off over there, and we are going to promptly deal with that unit. Meanwhile, our long-range missile units are not being used effectively. They're firing at the units we do not want, so I'm redirecting them to fire against the missile cavalry, since we don't really have a counter to the missile cavalry. Really, immediately you can see that we're starting to rout some of the enemy cavalry, since our cavalry is vastly superior to their, but we are not going to be giving chase, because we do notice a vast majority of the enemy melee troops are slowly making their way towards the battle, and we really want to prioritize and get as many of them to engage our front lines. Meanwhile, in the deep center over here, you can see that a lot of the enemy cavalry have actually charged headlong into our pikemen. We actually waited for the last second to draw down our pikes and basically catch them over here. So we have managed to nullify most of the enemy cavalry very early on in the battle, and this actually gives us a significant advantage. Alexander, however, is pretty much just chilling because we're kind of trying to wait for that decisive moment where the entire enemy army kind of commits to the front line. And as you can see, we are starting to curl up our echelon formation a bit more in anticipation for all of these units to come and engage us, pretty much freeing up our units, our flanking units, to counter charge against them. As you can see, since Alexander is not doing really much, I am starting to maneuver him a little bit around, and I'm trying to mimic that on that left flank as well. We're trying to get to the weaker sections of the enemy army as we possibly can, hit them from the rear, basically initiate our hammer and anvil tactics. And you can see a lot of the enemy cavalry already routing from the field of battle. They have had enough, of course, and it's pretty much a slogfest now in the melee section, or the melee side of things over here. You can see that the majority of the enemy army is actually engaged on the curved portion of echelon formation, but they are going to be effectively held at bay over here by our pikemen. Of course, they're not going to be able to do much. Meanwhile, they're being pelted with arrows and slingshots from all directions, and it's only going to get worse for this major blob over here. I noticed one of the units that was initially moving towards my echelon formation is kind of moving towards my Agrarian Peltaste, so I am intercepting them, and this is why that immediate right and left flank is very important. I have gone ahead and decided to keep a single unit of cavalry over here in reserve to kind of counter them, but I am using my immediate right and left flank to quickly resolve this issue over here. Meanwhile, on that right flank, Alexander's still taking his time, and since finally this opening is being, slowly presenting itself to us, I am moving my Agrarian axemen slowly towards them. I'm in no rush of doing so because I have noticed some of the units still haven't engaged, and I don't want them to shift their focus towards my Agrarian axemen. So I'm going to take my own sweet time to get into position and then start hurling my javelins. Of course, some of my other Agrarian axemen going into that narrow formation in an attempt to flank over here. All the way in the back, you can see Alexander and his companion cavalry have actually occupied the rear position, and very soon we'll begin our hammer and anvil tactics. And there you have it, that extra cavalry unit comes in very handy. Managed to get a decisive charge over here, routing out this unit, and we have only lost a single unit of Agrarian axemen in the mix, so really good micromanagement happening over here. We're still trying to shadow the enemy movements, especially retreating units. We're trying to break them completely so they can't return to the battle. I noticed some of the enemy reinforcements slowly trickling down into the battle, of course, and I dedicate some of my cavalry, as you can see, a couple of my cavalry units to go ahead and attack them. We're still trying to position as best as we can, and over here finally our Agrarian Peltaste are going to be unleashing their volleys into the enemy units. Now I'm a little bit too scared to zoom into this carnage over here, because this often ends up crashing the battle. As far as replays are concerned, the game is really unstable. If it was real time, I could be able to zoom in. However, in a replay, for some reason, the game actually processes it a lot worse. So I'm not gonna really venture too forth and try to go really close, but you can see that they have the absolute advantage. They're shooting into the unshielded side. A lot of the missiles gonna be hitting the enemy units over there, right into the blob, and of course they also have the high ground, so they will be doing a lot more damage. Meanwhile, my Agrarians have pinned down a couple of these units over here, so I will be charging into their rear and trying to break them. Alexander himself has managed to this is not Alexander, I'm sorry, it's Cassander. Alexander would be the main flag over there. Our cavalry over here making quick work of some of the reinforcements, preventing them from getting into the battlefield. Meanwhile, on that right flank, as you can see, our Agrarians are in position. They have managed to throw a couple of the volleys. Now, this is not that many javelins, so I can kind of zoom in and showcase this over here. Now, you have two options. You can charge with this unit over here, or you can charge with this unit. Now, this unit is better positioned for a complete rear charge, so I eventually decide to charge that unit over there. And there you have it. On that far left flank, you can see that I have charged my cavalry and managed to free up my Agrarian axemen. And over here on the right flank, as you can tell, I have managed to charge this other unit of Agrarian. And since this unit is free, I have issued multiple orders by just holding down the shift key and issuing several movement orders for them to circle around. Alexander's still not doing that much. He's got no kills so far in this battle because he's really trying to find a weak spot over here. And now we've noticed that most of the enemy army is engaged over here, so we're trying to charge in with our units. Unfortunately, our charge has been broken by a unit of Phalangite that have managed to move back at the crucial moment, so I've decided to move my cavalry back again. And we're trying to get that opening over here. Noticing our Agrarian axemen can also, assist over here. And Alexander himself is finally getting into the battle. Let's see, he's starting to get some big kills over here. And he's gotten a pretty decent charge into the enemy. Starting to score some kills, of course. We're noticing a couple of other skirmishers, and we're trying to wipe out some of the isolated units over here by charging in the back, but it's not going to be easy. They are medium spearmen, and of course our own shock cavalry is not going to be doing too well against them, so we have to be really careful with this phase of the battle. Right now everything is stabilized. The entire front line is completely stable. So we can really focus on other things. Our missile units have, however, depleted all of their munitions, but they have done their roles fairly decently. We can take a quick look and see what kind of casualties they've scored. Scored about an average of 100 kills per man, so that's actually really great. Meanwhile, Alexander is almost at the 100 mark himself. But that's really important because they managed to deal with the enemy missile cavalry. Now over here we're starting to see some of the enemy units kind of rout from the battle, but for the most part a lot of them have actually turned around to face my Agrarians, and a couple of these Agrarian units will actually take a lot of casualties as a result of this. As you can see, a lot of the enemy are actually ignoring my pikemen. I think the ideal thing to do over here was to get out of pike phalanx formation and just countercharge the enemy, but still some enemy units over here, and I don't end up doing that, and I would consider that to be one of the micromanagement errors on my part. As you can see, one of the Agrarians starting to waver, but I am using my Agrarian Peltaste, who are quite good in melee, to be honest. They have just 9 armor, but 9 melee attack, 12 melee defense, was really good for a skirmisher unit, and overall weapon damage of 32, 13 of which is armor piercing. However, as you can see, that right hand side flank is looking a lot better. We're managing to clear out the enemy units in the region, and we're starting to charge in. We're using our hammer and anvil tactics to kind of deal with the enemy over here and break them as much as we can. As you can see, they're starting to waver. Meanwhile, Alexander is trying to go into this blob over here, and you could see I kind of demoralize the unit even before the charge so that they will immediately break as quickly as possible. That is exactly what you'd like to see, and in that charge we actually managed to kill the enemy general, so the entire enemy army is routing, and I go ahead and end the battle. I don't try to hunt them down because I'm trying to retain that momentum advantage. And there you have it, guys, our very first victory against the Achaemenid Empire. Very decisive victory. Managed to wipe out one entire army and of course significantly weaken the other armies. Now the real thing over here, we just want to ransom off the captives. We have no need to keep enslaving them. Now the real purpose over here is to try to keep as many of these weaker armies as possible. Try not to wipe them. I can easily wipe them out, but what that will do, it will only allow them to recruit new armies. So we want to keep them as weak as possible. We don't really care. None of these armies are going to pose a significant threat to us any longer, so we are just going to retain them over here in the region without much care. Of course, our own troops, we didn't take that many losses, but we are going to have to fight this battle over here to kind of conquer the settlement of Nicomedia. That is the real objective, before, of course, the enemy can start sending some reinforcements. Meanwhile, our spy over here is not really that much more useful, so we're going to start moving him to kind of explore a little bit more of the interiors of the lands that we would like to conquer in this episode. Just get a line of sight. As you can see, of course, the Lydians, they have no more armies, just these 4 armies over here, 3 of which have been dealt with, and of course we have the last remaining army over here that we really have to fight into a siege, because of course this siege auto-resolve isn't that favorable. We want to prioritize being able to kind of take over the settlement of Nicomedia with as little casualties as possible. But of course, mercenary Greek hoplite. They're coming from the first class population, so I think it might be interesting to actually hire a couple of these guys, so that we can, use them in our upcoming battle, and then of course we can disband them to gain some population class into the settlement. We might as well just do that. That is really good for us to do, so that we can get some first class population and help with our replenishment. Now when it comes to attacking this settlement, before we go ahead and do that, let us go for our army traditions. Quick look over here. We have the companions that actually improves our cavalry. Of course, that's really good. Campaign range movement, not too interested in that. Apart from that, we have the Eastern Veterans, which gives movement speed and melee defense against Persian factions. That is really good, because of course we are going to be outnumbered, as you saw in the first battle, of course. So we definitely need to prioritize on that. Less exhaustion and fatigue for all Hellenistic units is not that important, so I'm not going to be prioritizing that. Let's actually go for this. Of course, the army upkeep cost is going to make a significant impact, and we want the cavalry for sure, so that our cavalry is a little bit more hard hitting. Apart from that, damage bonus for all units, we can get that as well. That is really good, actually. Yeah, let's actually go for the damage bonus for all Hellenic units. Now, in order to attack the settlement of Nicomedia, we have a full stack over here, which is rather concerning. But what we are going to do is we're going to transfer over some of these troops if we possibly can. Try to consolidate our armies over here. Let's actually disengage from this siege, and we actually use Alexander to besiege the settlement, and then we're going to figure out how we're going to go about these things. Of course, unfortunately, this guy is not close enough to attack this settlement anymore, which is a bit of a problem, which means I have to fight this battle with a depleted settlement, or I have to actually fight the entire battle with all of my units, which I think is actually worth it in this instance. I mean, not entirely sure. I don't want to fight a huge garrison fight, especially because I want these guys. And I don't want to be taking too many losses. I could auto-resolve it, but I'm not looking to. I mean, the auto-resolve looks really bad, guys, so I am going to have to fight it. Because once again, I want to keep that momentum up and running. Unfortunately, over here, what's happened is that the two of these Agrarians actually were involved in a lot of the fighting. They managed to get quite a lot of kills, but they have also taken quite a lot of casualties. So they're not going to be really good at scaling the walls. Instead, what we're going to have to rely on is some of our other Phalangite units, which is not ideal. But you know what? Yeah, I'm just going to fight it with some of our Phalangite units. Turn off the control large armies. Let's just go ahead and assault the settlement, and I will see you all in the battle. Of course, we're going to be fighting this army against this army. Once again, we're going to be outnumbered over here slightly, not too much, but it's still quite significant because, of course, we are fighting a siege in which we are, of course, the attackers, and of course, the defenders have a massive advantage over us. Alright everybody, welcome to the Siege of Nicomedia. As you can see, I have managed to deploy my siege ladders in an advanced position using the guerrilla deployment of my Agrarian axemen. However, they're not going to be taking part in this battle because, as you can tell from the previous battle, they did manage to take quite a lot of casualties. On top of that, they are lightly armored, which means they will take a lot of casualties if they scale the walls. But typically, you want to scale the walls with melee infantry because they are the best at fighting on the ramparts. For the units that will be scaling the walls, I'm using my heavier armored silver shield hoplite, and I kind of make a mistake over here by assigning a Chalcospides, which have a very small shield and not really that great of a melee entry attack. So that's kind of a mistake I did because I actually did not know the unit card is of Polyperchon, the unique unit. Meanwhile, the other unique unit is an imposter chilling in the back with the actual other Chalcospides. Seleucus Nikito, ever so cunning, has decided to stay out of the fight and assign Chalcospides units to take his place. Now, one of the reasons I like to deploy my ladders up close is that I don't have to move really slowly a great distance to get to the walls, so to get to the ramparts. and that actually minimizes a lot of the casualties these units will be taking. Meanwhile, our own missile troops such as our Agrianian Peltaste and our Cretan and Rhodian slingers and archers and mercenaries are going to try to soften up some of the defenses on that rampart. Now, the very reason I decide to attack this gate in the center over here, I had three options: the left gate, the center, and the right. The reason I'm attacking the center is because of this elevation advantage. It's not so much so as an advantage for us, because we still have to fire into the ramparts, which is a very bad angle if you're an attacker. But what it does is it takes away the enemy's advantage, because when they are firing from this position down here, they also do not have a very clear line of sight on our troops, so we are going to be able to preserve our troops a lot better. Meanwhile, when it comes to missile units, of course, our archers are going to be very useful in this battle, because of course, as you can see, they are arching their shots, which means most of their missiles are going ahead and attacking the enemy. You can see some of them ricocheting off the walls. However, with our slingers, while most of them actually ricochet off the walls, most of them actually overshoot over here. So slingers not really that good in a siege battle, but they're quite good on an open field battle, especially against enemy missile cavalry units, which the Achaemenid Empire has plenty of. And there you have it. You have some of our units that are beginning to scale the walls. Already managed to scale the walls. I'm going to be a little bit careful and not try to zoom in too close to the action, because I've noticed replays are really wonky, and they kind of are less optimized than actual real-time battle, which means that if I zoom in, it could actually crash the game. And to be honest with you guys, I've actually had to record this battle 2 times already because I crashed it twice, and I just can't wait for my upgrade in my system, and perhaps then I will be able to zoom in a little bit further. So I apologize for that, of course, but then of course there's no guarantees even with the upgraded system. It's just that Rome 2 Total War is just so poorly optimized, especially replays. However, the main idea over here right now, since we have engaged and attacked on the ramparts, we're almost in the process of clearing out the ramparts. We're going to try to clear out this unit, capture this gate, allowing our cavalry to get into this settlement and try to hit the enemy in the rear. Meanwhile, we have only a singular tower over here in this region, which we are going to try to neutralize, and in fact, if we are so lucky, we can even convert it into our own tower, which should be able to deal some damage against the enemy units. Now that our chocolate speed is actually closer to the gates, we are in the process of trying to burn it down. As you can see, we have already dealt some fire damage to the gates, and right over here is where I noticed that little cheeky bastard Seleucus, and I've told him, hey, what the hell are you doing with my Chalcospedes units? You should be up on the walls, you coward. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to be scaling the walls and trying to assist in the fighting up here. However, let's just go ahead into the future, because nothing much happens. It's just a grueling fight that's happening on the ramparts as we slowly try to clear out unit by unit. And once we manage to do so, of course, in the future, we are going to be trying to take over this right-hand side gate, which will be the most defining factor in this battle. Alright, so here we are in the future. As you can see, we're starting to try to capture these gates. We have a bunch of cavalrymen outside the gates. They are busy burning the gates just in case we are not able to fully capture it. As long as we neutralize it, we should be able to cross the gates without having oil pour down on our men, which can deal out some significant amount of damage and casualties. So we're just making extra sure that we neutralize the gate. If we're able to capture it, well and good. If not, we're not going to bother. We're just going to try our level best to neutralize it. Unfortunately, a unit of enemy cavalry is moving towards that gate, and as soon as they realize that we're going to capture the gate, they actually end up being over here. Meanwhile, in the main first section of the battle, you can see most of our troops have scaled the walls. I've even gone ahead and assigned all of our missile units that have depleted their munitions to scale the walls, just so that they can spread out some of that damage received from the missile units. But as you can see, these missile units starting to fire into our own units, not having the perfect line of sight, and of course that that feature in the terrain which puts them at a lower height is going to significantly impact the damage output, so that's really good for us. Meanwhile, all of these units that were stationed on this gate have managed to move towards the center and try to reinforce this gate, which is on fire currently, which means very soon we should be able to move our Chalcospedes units into the breach and pin down those enemy units, which is very important. Over here, as I mentioned earlier, that cavalry unit has decided to stop us from outright capturing the gate. So we are still going to try to burn the gate. Thankfully, it's a cavalry unit, so they won't be able to capture the gate. The best that they can do is neutralize the gate, which isn't going to be too much of a problem, because the main purpose is to prevent the oil from spilling onto our cavalry units. Meanwhile, this Chalcospades unit is going to try to neutralize or even capture this tower if they can do so itself. Meanwhile, on the ramparts, you can see most of the defenders have been exterminated, and we're trying to clean up the ramparts so that we can start to eventually push into the settlement itself. Of course, our Chalcospades units a little bit delayed over here, but we could have pushed in order to pin down some of the enemy units that are protecting the gates. And you have really a lot of units over there, and unfortunately, if I zoom in too close, it will for sure crash the battle, and I'm not prepared to record this battle for a fourth time. In fact, the first battle that I showcased also crashed, and I recorded it again. However, in this battle, I'm not going to be doing that. Now, as you can see, this gate is busy burning down, which means soon we will be able to enter the settlement. And we are almost in the process of capturing this tower, so I have decided to send some of my units, which I mistook to be a hoplite unit once again. It's actually a silver shield unit, so they're not going to be that good against enemy cavalry, but for some reason, even though they're using their melee equipment, they're still having a decisive advantage over this cavalry unit, and this cavalry unit's actually losing decisively, so that's really nice. And as you can see over there through the gates, you can see some of our units, especially our pikemen, have marched through the gates and trying to pin down the enemy units. Not that many enemy units left in reserve. They have a single missile unit that's trying to fire at my own men. They don't really have a good line of sight, so a lot of their missiles are actually going to miss, and they are a slinger unit, so even those that get atop the walls are going to be shooting or overfiring way past their mark, so they're not going to be able to do too much damage against us. However, over here, as you can see, our cavalry has managed to enter the settlement. In response, of course, the enemy phalanx unit is trying to move towards our cavalry, but our cavalry is going to be a lot quicker, and we're going to be able to dish out quite a lot of damage by the time they get there. And there you have it. You can see there's a rear charge. I'm not going to get too close because I don't want to crash the battle again. Just going to watch safely from this rooftop at a distance, and you can start to see some of the enemy units starting to waver. At this point, I actually decide to assign as many units that are on the ramparts to keep charging down. As you can see, with some of our Agrarian pelters, stay really good in melee. They are getting engaged so that they can do some damage over there. Alexander himself finally is going to enter the settlement, and when he does, he's going to play a decisive role in shattering the morale of the enemy units. And as you can see, a lot of them starting to waver, and Alexander himself has just made his entrance into the settlement. We have a single unit of missile cavalry over here, skirmisher type cavalry, that is dealing a little bit of damage to our own cavalry, and I decide that we are not really decisively breaking these units over here, so I pulled out my cavalry again. I've charged into this cavalry, keeping in mind, of course, I do not want to charge into this phalanx type unit, but unfortunately with the pathfinding, some of these units are going to overstep and get into that phalanx unit. But more importantly, we're able to crush this last remaining reserve unit, which is very important. Meanwhile, Alexander, as you can see, he's starting his charge uphill into the enemy formation, and of course he's going to dish out. And there you have it. I have even intimidated the enemy to further lower their morale, and as soon as we're done dealing with this cavalry, we charge all of our cavalry into the rear over there, completing our hammer and anvil at the gates and effectively winning the battle. Of course, I'm not going to be showcasing this, but you can pretty much infer what's going to happen after that charge basically happens. As you can already see, a lot of these units are wavering. There's pretty much no hope. We managed to capture Nicomedia with a very few casualties, the only lost unit being that Chalcospades unit, being one of the Chalcospades units rather, that scaled the walls earlier. However, with that, I'm gonna go ahead, end the battle, and I will see you all in the campaign. Alright, with that, we have captured our first settlement of Nicomedia from the Lydians, of course. We are gonna go ahead and loot the settlement And because we selected the large control large armies off, we didn't have to fight the garrison. We did lose a single unit, and that unit was a Chalcaspides unit, but it's not that big of a deal. What we are going to do, however, is we are going to have a little bit of difficulty replenishing over here, because since we don't have any population class, but for now we are going to just deploy into the port, of course, of Nicomedia, so that we can replenish. Meanwhile, we're going to turn off the taxation over here in Nicomedia as much as we can. Go ahead, demolish all of the buildings. We don't really need them. And we are going to perhaps demolish this one, or we could keep it as a military recruitment. It doesn't really make sense. Let's just dismantle all of the buildings. We have a little bit of money, which means we can do some stuff with that, but we are not going to be doing much in this turn. Quick look to see. Everything seems to be fine. Was a pretty difficult battle, to be honest. We did lose a quite significant amount of troops. But the important thing over here is that we can go ahead and actually just disband these guys and get some first class population in there. But I'm going to wait a little bit, allow Alexander to kind of replenish, and then we can go ahead and do that. However, with that, we are done with this turn. Quick look at our politics. Everything seems to be fine. Political parties are fairly loyal, so we can go ahead and actually end our very first turn of this episode, and I will see you all in the next turn. Alright, welcome to the next turn. We begin with a blackmail. Of course, we're going to counter the rumors. Several characters have leveled up, so let's actually quickly look at them. And this is really great because these guys are, of course, our governor generals, which we are going to promptly improve as far as their commercial output is concerned. Apart from that, we have a general over here that we can promote in order to get the military logistician and military conscriptor. And finally, we have another general over here, Hephaestion. I didn't mention him before, but we are also going to improve him as well. Apart from that shipwright report, we have recruited a couple of our fleets over there, so we're going to move them as close as we can to Nicomedia. Alexander, being in the port of Nicomedia, was able to replenish. As you can see, they have another full stack over here, the Lydians, so it's not entirely looking that great. We have to deal with another army over here in the region, but we are going to move our spy up to the north, deploy him over there. You can see they have even another army over here, a couple of armies over there. We've already dealt with 4 armies, and you can already see there are another 3 full stacks over here. So yeah, we are severely on the back foot. But we're not going to care too much about that. Right now, what we are going to do, however, is we are going to see if we transfer over a troop. Yeah, should be able to reach Nicomedia, which is important. We are going to transfer over one of our phalangites to Alexander's army. Go ahead, deploy Cassandros to protect the settlement of Nicomedia. Speaking of Nicomedia, we can dismantle the main settlement building. Now, I like to repair it in the first turn and then dismantle it in the second turn so that I get a full garrison. If you guys notice over here, our garrison is significantly depleted, but if you repair it in the first turn, dismantle it in the second turn, you will get a partially full garrison, which is really, really powerful, especially in the early game. Over here, we're going to prioritize on, of course, culturally converting the province so that we get some cultural population boost over here, which is really important. Apart from that, we don't really have a lot of population over here, so unfortunately Cassandros cannot replenish, and of course we are a little bit lacking in terms of our phalangites. And quick look over here, we do have Koinos, which is another Chalcaspides unit, and we have Leonatos, which is a Harpaphistae, which is a hoplite type unit, which is very important. We are going to be recruiting that and transferring them over to Alexander's army. We're going to keep as many of the historical characters within Alexander's armies if possible. Meanwhile, keep moving our spy down, try to get some line of sight of what's happening over here. We can finally see side. I think pretty much with the Lydians, you have just these 2 armies remaining. They can recruit another army. They have 3 armies over here that should have retreated and significantly depleted, but we're going to ignore them because we don't really need to deal with them for now. However, that being said, very quick look over here. What exactly are we researching? We're researching, I think, down this line because we want to build up the Emporium, which is a really important building. It's over here. It's the trader. The upgraded version of the trader actually gives a boost from all commerce, which is quite important. However, that being said, we can wait a little bit for Alexander to completely replenish over here. However, it's not important. What is important is that we attack Pergamon. The garrison is fairly small, and of course it is Hellenic culture, which means we could possibly or potentially auto-resolve this one, but the auto-resolve might not be all that favorable. So you know what, I'm not gonna auto-resolve this one because I really need to retain as many troops as I possibly can. In order to maintain my forward momentum, we're just going to keep on continuing the siege. We are going to attack that, manually, but I'm not going to be showcasing that because of course we are strapped for time in this episode. We have a lot of things to showcase, of course, a lot of action, as you can tell probably, and this is just the armies that are present in the region. We of course have a lot of the Achaemenid armies that are making their way towards us as we speak. Of course we have the Egyptian satrapy, and they even have two other satrapies all the way out here in the east. They have Arachosia as well as they have Bactriane, and they also have the Armenians, and so far we've only engaged with the Lydians. They also have the Cappadocians, so we are up for some really interesting fights here in the future. So we are going to go ahead attack this, but before that we're going to take a quick look to see what we can build. I think it is a kind of time. Let's see, Alexander, he does have one generic Chalcospedia unit. Meanwhile, this army, what exactly do we need? We need another unit of Thessalian Hippeus, as well as we need some Chalcospades units over here. We only have 3. So we're going to go ahead and get those. A couple of those Chalcospades units. Perfect. And a Hetoroi cavalry. I think that should fill up our Hetoroi ranks. And of course... our Thessalian cavalry ranks, and of course our Chalcospades will also be kind of filled up with that. And apart from that, I think that is fine. Of course, we're going to get rid of these 2 Greek mercenary hoplites. They are now of the correct eugenis population, which we don't have at the moment, but in the next turn we will gain a little bit of our population, and that's when we will disband them alongside, of course, our fleet over here. We're going to disband them over here, so that's about 60 times 6. That's 360 second class population, which should be more than enough to kind of replenish this army, which isn't all that badly damaged. However, with that, let's just go ahead and initiate, of course, our attack against Pergamon. But before we do that, we have a dignitary over here who has been busy kind of leveling up in Macedonia, Kai Eperos. We're going to move him towards Nicomedia in anticipation, and we can move him somewhere over there. In order to help culturally convert this province, we only have 36% Hellenic culture versus 53%, and we're growing at a very slow pace. So it's going to take quite some time for us to kind of, culturally convert this into Hellenic majority. So, of course, sending a dignitary over is going to ease that burden a little bit. With that, we are pretty much done with the turn. The only thing left to do is, of course, fight this battle. I'm not going to be showcasing it. It's pretty generic and actually rather weak garrison, so I'm going to be fighting it, and I will see you all after the battle is done. And I have managed to conquer Pergamon. It was a very decisive victory. Only 95 men lost, which is absolutely perfect. Much better than the auto-resolve. Now, I cannot actually see how much of a population the class they have over here. It is Hellenic culture, so I am kind of inclined to kind of peacefully occupy the settlement instead of kind of destroy the local population. And let's actually go ahead, because we do have a little bit of money in our treasury. We're gonna peacefully occupy it. It does have a slightly low population than I would have expected, especially because I am keeping in mind the grand campaign side of things. So unfortunately, not that much population, which is all the more reason that we actually spared the population over here so that we can replenish quite effectively in the end turn. Meanwhile, just a quick look to see all of our units. We should be completely replenished within a single turn, which is really good. And of course, the next priority would be to attack this army over here. Apart from that, we are going to try to build up a third army, which we should eventually build. And I think that third army is going to be under the second full army is going to be under the control of Cassandros, of course. And then we're going to have a smaller army to protect the settlement of Nicomedia. And now we are going to go ahead, and I forgot to dismantle this building over here so that we can get a little bit more garrison within Nicomedia and kind of dissuade the enemy from attacking Nicomedia. However, with that, we are done with this turn. Of course, we have a Pergamon occupied, which means we can get access to some more unique units over here. We have the Agira Spides of Antigonus. These are a phalanx type unit, and they actually have this scare ability, which is actually interesting. Apart from that, you have another Hetaroi unit, which is really good. I think I'm going to retain the Hetaroi unit with Alexander, perhaps phase out their Thessalian cavalry, which means we can actually disband this Thessalian cavalry a little bit. And in order to transfer the units back and forth, I will need another army over here, and I don't think I have the army cap to do so. So what I am actually going to do is I'm going to disband Hephaestion over here. I'm going to recruit another character over here, Philotas. Let's see. I'm going to replace him with Hephaestion again, because I want to keep Hephaestion up and about so that he can level up. But for now, we can just select any random character, preferably a general or future general. Let's see, what do we have here? Can we actually promote any characters? That's very important. Let's promote that character over there. Any other characters? We can't. This guy has gravitas. Morale is pretty good. Python. Okay. What else? Okay, so I guess it's going to be Python. And we go ahead, get Python. Where are you? There you are. Reinstate the legacy of Hephaestion. That's okay. And you are going to take a Agrispides unit and a Thessalian cavalry unit. I think pretty much this depleted, or this full unit rather. And in the next turn, you are going to move towards Nicomedia and try to transfer those units off to Cassander. Since we have 2 slots that we can start recruiting, we are going to go for the units over here. And what that should do is it also helps with our replenishment. As you can see, we're getting we need 2 turns to replenish that Rhodian Slinger, but when you recruit units, it actually improves your recruitment rate. And as you can see, in the next turn, we should have a full army ready to go at the Lydians. Of course, they might decide to go towards Ephesus, but that remains to be seen how they go about doing that. However, without any further ado, let us go ahead and end the turn over here. We can actually recruit a couple more Chalcospides. I think that's what I'm inclined to do. This unit's over here doesn't look to be too... Yeah, let's actually recruit another Chalcospides unit. We want to retain a little bit of treasury. We don't want to deplete it. I can spend my money on upgrading and building up buildings, but I'm not too keen on doing that just yet. However, with that, let's go ahead, end the turn, and I will see you all in the next turn. Alright, welcome to the next turn. Hephaestion has returned. Now this is a little bit dangerous, because I wanted to be able to kind of reach over there, but I don't think I can. Meanwhile, these armies, as you can see, there are a lot more armies being gathered up over here. And I'm not entirely sure where that other army went. I think it went towards Pessinous, which is kind of good for us in a way, because it allows Alexander to keep pushing his conquest towards Ephesus, of course. But for now, since of course we have a kind of shortage over here, we're gonna stay put. Meanwhile, over here, it's very important to build these 2 buildings. Of course, you're building the sanitation building to help with the growth rate, and of course you're going to build over here a supply depot, and that is a crucial part of our strategy, because you're going to have a lot of build up over here, a lot of armies over here, and of course our supplies are going to take a significant hit. As you can see, we're already short by about 40 supplies, and we're losing supplies quite a bit faster. Of course, when more and more armies pour into the region, you're going to lose supplies even faster than that. So for now, what we are going to try to do is at least build up a little bit more of army. We need a little bit more army, especially Hetaroi type units. phalanx type units. Let's actually build that up, and we can get a couple of Agrianians. We can't really get them from here. However, can we get them in Pella? We can, or Philippopolis rather. We can, so we don't really mind. We're going to focus a lot on our Chalcaspides because these guys are really good at holding a settlement, especially a wall settlement, and that is very important. Apart from that, we want to actually upgrade this building again, and since we dismantle it, as you can see, our garrison is almost full, so the enemy is going to be dissuaded from attacking over here. But what I am worried about is, of course, the weakness over here, the perceived weakness at Pergamon. Unfortunately, I will not take the risk to link up with my army over here in Nicomedia because I cannot actually reach that army. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to inch a little bit closer towards Pergamon, just go into that ambush stance, and then hopefully in the next turn I can reach Nicomedia, transfer over some of those troops that I badly need to transfer off, and then we can actually just deploy our fleet over here. So now the important thing with our fleet is we can go ahead and disband all of the units. As you can see, that gives us a population class 2 Politides boost, and we also want to disband a couple of these first class citizens that we hired, and there we have it. We have a little bit of a first class boost. Unfortunately, no real third class boost, but do we have any third class citizens that could prevent our regeneration? No, we do not. So we are most likely going to be replenishing in this end turn, which is great. Then we're going to try to link up these armies. In the meantime, we are going to be building up a decent garrison type army over here with Stratos Therapeuticus. We're going to exchange him with, of course, Cassander, and then we're going to use Cassander to kind of push into Pessinous. However, with that, we are pretty much done with this turn. The only thing remaining is, of course, to attack Ephesus. Quick look to see the population class in Ephesus. Again, not a really great amount of population class. I would have expected a lot more. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and we are going to go ahead, just simply attack the settlement. Of course, I do not need to be showcasing this battle, a very easy battle. And I think the auto-resolve is also pretty easy, but I am going to go ahead and fight it because I just want to be that extra clinical, take as many or as little casualties as I possibly can. And I will see you all after the battle is done. And we have managed to conquer Ephesus as well. Alexander is keeping pushing into the western coast of Anatolia. We are going to go ahead, just peacefully occupy the settlement. We are making a little bit more income now because I think I believe we are taxing this province, which I want to see what our income is looking like. So yeah, Ionia is making a decent amount of income, which could be the reason why we might convert it into a future economic province. But let's just go ahead and of course, the garrison is going to be pretty weak, so we're going to go ahead and dismantle it because we don't want any fleets attacking us over here. Meanwhile, we could repair this building. It's going to lead to a little bit of food issues. We can dismantle that one, but I don't really care. Let's just go ahead and do that. Quick look at our population. We took quite a little bit of losses, about 89 troops, but as you can see, I primarily focused on our Barbaroi units to take the brunt of the fighting, so that, of course, we do not deplete our more precious citizen class, of course. With that, we are done with this turn. Of course, we have to watch and see what happens over here. Now, what I would like them to do is kind of move towards Nicomedia rather than ignore us and go towards Pergamon, because, of course, Pergamon, as you can tell, pretty, significantly not very well defended. We're going to keep moving our spy a little bit deeper into Achaemenid territory. Meanwhile, our other spy over here in the region can go ahead and deploy. And I think what we are just going to do is just try to sabotage an army, since we can't really deploy in this turn. That kind of spends a little bit of our income, but more importantly allows our spy to level up a little bit with that experience gain, of course. Apart from that, we are pretty much done with this turn, slowly but surely increasing our provinces over here. And I think the play over here is to not depend on this building. We're going to dismantle it, convert it into a fishing port, because as soon as the slave trader is built, we are going to be losing -4 food, and our food is starting to look a little bit dicey over here. So that is really the important thing, guys. However, with that, let's just go ahead, end the turn, and I will see you all in the next turn. Alright, welcome to the next turn. several of our characters have leveled up, especially our dignitary over here. We can kind of improve him. You can see our economy is slowly starting to improve a little bit, which is really great. We're going to focus on that public order because, you know, public order is definitely important. Apart from that, we can even get the research rate, which is also important. Public order is not that great important. We're going to focus on food. Meanwhile, Alexander has also leveled up, which is great. We can focus more on the military logistician. That is very important. We are also going to be focusing a lot on our cavalry speed. We have quite decent and fast-moving cavalry, so that's not really the priority. But I want to take a look at the Persian cavalry. They are respectable in their speed, 7 speed, which means we're not going to be that much faster than them. So we could focus on getting some more speed, especially with the booming voice ability. That will help us push Alexander into speed 9 perhaps, or closer to speed 9 at least. Or we could actually improve the melee attack and defense skill, which I think is very, very important. Especially since we are going to be fighting a lot of armies over here. Okay, so I think what has happened in the intern is the enemy has decided to move a little bit in this direction. A little bit away from the battle, which is kind of great. But it's also dangerous because they can actually move towards Pergamon, which is a danger. I'm not entirely sure, especially this army over here could potentially do that. Meanwhile, Cassander has improved. We can go ahead, give him the army outpost and the military logistician so that he can replenish a little bit faster. Now, the real danger is, of course, this army over here that could potentially move and attack Pergamon, which is definitely going to have a weaker garrison. So, not really looking forward to that. Instead, what we are going to do over here is we're going to build a muster field, build a fishing port, because that's important. We don't really need the level 2 Pergamon settlement anymore since we have recruited all of the unique units, so we can go ahead and dismantle it. I think the play over here, I'm not entirely sure because this army could potentially attack Pergamon. I think the play over here is to be smart about it, retreat a little bit, and we can gain some pikemen as mercenaries, and we can gain a couple of these units that might actually significantly deplete our income. However, it's not looking too bad. Unfortunately, we can't recruit any other important units that could help hold out this settlement. So we are quite significantly outnumbered over here. So I'm a little bit concerned as to what's going to happen over here. I was hoping to link up these two armies quicker than I would have expected. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that as quickly as possible because it's very important to have your second army over here in the region to be able to do certain things. But the important thing about this is that, of course, this army has moved out of position, which means we could potentially attack Pessinous, fight a huge battle, be a little bit, kind of overextended over here, to be honest. We're just going to take a quick look to see what's going on in the east. Nothing much. Okay, so we still have time. We have the advantage, and as you can see, that's why momentum is really important, because you're starting to see some Achaemenid forces approaching, and if you're a little bit slow, then what ends up happening is you're going to have a hard time settling into the region, which makes it extremely tough. Time is of the essence. We definitely have to attack Pessinous. Might not be a very good battle, but they have a very weak garrison, which means we can go ahead and attack them real quick. Unfortunately, it's going to take a couple of turns for us to reach there. So what we are going to do is we're going to move Alexander a little bit closer into these forests over here in Pessinous. Hopefully he should be able to go into an ambush stance. It's very hard to tell, actually. I wish there was an indicator of sorts to tell you how far you can progress and still retain your ambush. As far as abilities are concerned, I think the most important thing is to prioritize our melee attack. Of course, we want to make sure our melee attack and melee defense is really good so that our units do not take that much casualties. However, with that, we're done with this turn. Nothing much else left to do. We can potentially Yeah, there's not much I can do over here. Instead, what we could do is just replace this general again with Hephaestion. Go ahead, get Hephaestion over there. And yeah, I'm not too happy with the situation over here, but hopefully they will not attack. I mean, that's quite a lot of troops. We have a decent amount of Phalangite and Hoplite to kind of hold out important regions, but it might not be enough. We'll just have to take a little bit of a risk on that one, and hopefully our barracks will be built up in that time in which we can get some access to some much desperately needed Chalcospidis units over here. However, with that, let's just go ahead, end this turn, and I will see you all in the next turn. Alright, welcome to the next turn. Python has returned home. A character has leveled up, so let's actually give her some more abilities. Research rate, of course, we're going to focus on all of these things. Meanwhile, our other dignitary over here can begin to deploy herself. As you can see, some of the armies have moved back, but some have gotten even closer to Pergamon, which is really, really concerning, guys. We can't really recruit any good units, but we can at the very least recruit a couple of these guys, I guess. We will definitely need some units to defend this settlement. Meanwhile, we can move our spy a little bit closer. Okay, so there we can attack Pessinous, which is important for us to do so. And as you can see, Achaemenid stacks keep pouring, and we have yet another Achaemenid stack over here, so it's a little bit concerning because this stack can kind of move into the gaps over here towards Ephesus, which is going to be a disastrous thing. What we really need to do is actually start moving Perdiccas as quickly as we can towards Nicomedia in order to kind of protect our rear over here. But for now, the real important thing is, of course, attacking with Alexander over here. Now, we could attack the settlement. This army over here is in a fortified position, and I do not want to attack them in that fortified position. I want to deny them the advantage as much as I can. Let's just go ahead, attack. Of course, the auto-resolve is going to be pretty bad, so we're not going to focus on that auto-resolve that much. Instead, we're going to keep our spy over there. He's in pretty good position, and we're going to send this other spy down south over here. And if we go ahead and actually win this battle, then we can actually recruit some very important units that can help with the garrison over here. But we have dismantled the building over here, which means we should have a decent amount of garrison. In about 3 turns, we should be able to recruit some units. Of course, having a lot of mercenaries over here is going to strain our economy a little bit, but we are going to get rid of them promptly, and they are also coming from our population class that we value. But let's just quickly go ahead, quick save over here. We're going to fight this third engagement against the Lydians. Of course, we're going to try to weaken yet another Lydian army, and of course try to capture the garrison and the settlement of Pessinous for ourselves. Hopefully what that will do is we'll kind of try to encourage these units over here to attack, and we should be able to weaken out this alliance over here a little bit more. Hopefully even the Lydians turn their attention down southwards. I really don't want them focusing on my rear. As you can see, this is why strategic strategic expansion, especially in the Alexander campaign, is very important, because you want to be able to protect some of your recent conquests as best as you can. And of course, you can see the strategic importance of side, because if I did control side, then I would have prevented the crossing of this Achaemenid army, which is the real threat over here, guys. Because if this Achaemenid army comes up over here, could decide to move towards Ephesus, and if I try to respond to that, then I'm leaving Pessinous undefended, so I really need to hold outside. However, let's go ahead, end the turn, but before we do that, of course, we have to fight this battle. Let's not forget that. Quick save over here, hop into the battle, and I will see you all in the battle. Welcome to the third battle, the battle to conquer the settlement of Pessinous. Of course, we are up against a very small garrison, so it should be an easy fight, but more importantly, there is a massive Lydian army that's outside the settlement that will try to reinforce the defenders of the settlement, and as you can see, they are approaching us from the rear, so time is of the essence. We really need to march and quickly take out the defenders of the settlement so that we can turn about and try to face the enemy army. But thankfully for us, the enemy is sallying forward, leaving some of their missile units undefended, so I very quickly try to exploit it by sending my cavalry to wipe out some of these slingers. Quickly form up over here with my Phalangite units, of course. And They are getting into that pike formation, which is very nice. They're going to be able to hold out against these units. We're even moving up our hoplite units. Keep in mind, one of them, which is basically Antigonus, has the scare ability, which is really important in breaking the enemy morale as quickly as possible. I think even some of our cavalry, our heteroic cavalry, have the scare ability, which is really good, which means their charge is going to be extremely devastating. In fact, their scare ability is so good that even before we manage to catch up with some of these units, they actually break in morale, so that's absolutely amazing. Our missile units, we're trying to move them around to hit the weaker unshielded side of the enemy units, so nothing much to explain over there. Meanwhile, we have a couple of Agrinian axemen over here that I'm going to move into the settlement, try to capture this victory point over here, because when you capture a victory point, it actually significantly depletes the morale of the armies of the enemies that are on the field of battle. But there you have it. You have one cavalry unit making a charge into a unit of archers, and they're not going to be able to do much. They don't even have spears to defend themselves. And what this also ends up doing is it opens up the rear of the enemy garrison completely to us. A really good move over here. We're gonna be able to do some quick work here of these units and quickly try to face up the enemy army that is approaching us. As you can see, they are moving towards us, but they are moving very slowly towards us, which is actually in our favor, especially when considering the cavalry. But just as I speak, the cavalry starts to move at a little bit faster pace, and you can see that we have to really crush this army over here in order to reposition our own armies, and that's why I am charging as many units as I possibly can. I have turned off the fire at will to preserve my missiles for some of the more important skirmisher cavalry so that I can get them out of the battle. And once again, as you can see, I have intimidated with the war cry, basically shattering the morale of these units, which is very important to win as quickly as possible with as little casualties as possible. However, I'm going to fast forward over here until the enemy gets into position. Basically what I end up doing is forming my pike as a front line to prevent that. Of course, my hyperthisti or hoplite units are going to be behind them, applying that fear or scare modifier onto the enemy army. Alright, welcome to the future. As you can see, most of the enemy army has made its way towards us. They do have some missile cavalry, which is very dangerous, but we're going to use our missile units to deal with them. The real danger of this missile cavalry is, of course, they can attack our phalangite units, which are not very well protected against missile units, but their melee cavalry is not going to be able to do much. In fact, they're going to take quite a lot of casualties trying to charge. But as you can see, our archers are primarily focusing on the enemy missile cavalry. Meanwhile, our own cavalry have formed up on the right and on the left flanks. As you can see, we are going to try that hammer and anvil from either direction, of course, and try to break the enemy as quickly as possible. Our Agrinians have managed to capture the town center, so we are in the process of moving them out in order to help us against all of these enemy units. However, they are going to be too slow, and in fact the decisive Macedonian cavalry is going to win the day even before the Agrinians get into fighting range. But you can see over here we managed to rout out one enemy missile cavalry, and we're going to try to do the same with another unit of cavalry. We are running low on our missiles with our long range missile units, but we're going to try our level best to weaken the enemy missile cavalry as much as we possibly can, because as mentioned earlier, without our maximum modifiers for our cavalry movement speed, we're not going to be able to catch up to missile cavalry, so we really have to weaken them using our missile units. So the priority for our missile units is to focus on enemy missile cavalry. And there you have it. The entire enemy front line, as you can see, is being engaged with our pikemen, so it's looking really good. And as long as missile units are hurling in their missiles against our hoplite units, that's well and good, because I would rather them do that against our hoplite units than our phalangites, since hoplite units are way more stronger against enemy missile units. However, with that, we noticed a couple of units trying to encircle us, so we have used our Agrinian peltaste, who are quite good at melee, and we have supported with Alexander's companion cavalry that's going to charge on multiple sides against this enemy cavalry. Unfortunately, we do not get a very clean charge because of course timing was of the essence over there, but still they're going to be heavily outnumbered against a vastly superior cavalry, and now they decide to run away from us. So very quickly I give chase, and more importantly, there you have it. You can see that I've enabled the wedge formation, because as long as you're in wedge formation, you're not really that great in melee, but it isn't melee when the enemy cavalry is retreating from you. And more importantly, the wedge formation allows you to keep up with them and keep chasing and routing them off. And as soon as that is done, of course, I disabled the wedge formation, as you can see over here, and I'm now going to focus on my hammer and anvil against the enemy cavalry. Already you can see on that left flank we managed to catch out enemy missile cavalry, which is really good for us. They're going to be taking some significant casualties from our own heavily armored lancer cavalry. Of course, they're not going to have much of a chance against this cavalry unit. Meanwhile, our Alexander himself, along with his companion cavalry, is going to charge against his missile units. Pretty weak unit, no defense against cavalry charges, so it's not going to end up too good for them. However, there you have it, big charge over here. These guys are going to completely rout from the battlefield. Nothing much they can do about it. And now, since the entire enemy front line is actually being held by, of course, our phalangite units, we are going to perform a massive rear charge against all of them. We're just lining up our cavalry, as you can see over there. We're trying to make a proper line, and then we are individually going to select our charge into different units along the battle front line, and simultaneously even use Alexander's war cry to kind of demoralize the enemy and force them to quickly break and shatter. And there you have it. You can see already some of the units are wavering, and of course charging into this missile unit is going to be absolutely devastating to them. You can see the entire front line starting to break, and the war cry there with Alexander, and they have completely broken. But I do decide to continue this battle. Of course, I'm not going to showcase it, but I basically try to kill as many units. I'm not trying to wipe out the army, but I'm trying to kill as many units as I possibly can. The reason I'm not trying to wipe out the army is because I want to maintain that forward momentum. And with that, we have conquered Pessinous. We've managed to significantly weaken yet another army over here. That's great. They're pretty sizable. They're not entirely weakened as we had hoped, but it's a very good victory nonetheless. We could go ahead and loot the settlement. I'm not entirely sure of the population class over there, but I am going to go ahead and loot it because, of course, we do need some funds desperately. We will care about the population, which isn't that bad. Isn't amazing, but it isn't that bad either. Let's just quickly go ahead and repair all of the buildings. I believe we are taxing this province, so that's great. Okay, let's just turn off over here. Instead, we are going to cancel the building over here. We are going to dismantle both of these buildings over here. We're going to build the barracks over here in Pessinous because it's a little bit of a extended city or exposed city, a little bit on the front line. Having a barracks over here is going to be very important in order to improve the garrison size of this area. Instead, over here, we're going to focus on building some economic building just to help. Of course, this isn't going to be the final plan for this province, but this will kind of sort of slightly help us with our economy as well. And since we have quite a lot of money to spend on troops, further troops, we might actually go ahead and build up some troops, but we don't really have much of an option when it comes to troops, unfortunately. So we are going to just wait a little bit to see what happens over here. The real danger, of course, is this army over here, this Lydian army. We do have some Cappadocian armies as well that could decide to attack Alexander in the end turn. However, let's just go ahead and end the turn and we'll see what the future holds. Alright, as expected in the end turn, these guys are going to be attacking us from all sides if possible, and we are going to be having a big battle on our hands. We're going to quick save over here, hop into the battle. Of course, we're not going to select the control large armies so that we can kind of limit, but more importantly, we don't want our garrison to be taking too many casualties. So we're going to quick save over here, hop into the battle. Of course, Alexander's a little bit depleted in terms of his army, but it's not going to be too much of an issue. We have pikemen, so we are going to be able to better hold the settlement, and we have the opportunity of further weakening Cappadocians over here, which is really important. Meanwhile, the army of the Lydians that were over here have moved slightly closer towards Pergamon, so that's a little bit concerning. And of course, the Achaemenid army has moved in the south to that road that leads towards Ephesus, so it's very concerning. What we definitely have to do is we have to win this battle quite decisively. Quick save over here, win the battle quite decisively, and then move down south with Alexander to kind of deal with that possible threat. Alright, welcome to the defense of Pessinous against massive Cappadocian armies and of course even a Lydian stack that we defeated in the previous battle. We are in the end turn and it is extremely critical for us to win this battle as decisively as possible. We are heavily outnumbered. We are outnumbered more than 2:1. And we are going to try our level best to kind of minimize our own casualties. As far as our formation is concerned, we have our pikemen over here. I'm still trying to readjust my formation just a little bit because I noticed where the reinforcements are coming in from, which means this is the spot that they are most likely going to attack. So I'm going to form up another unit of pikemen over there and readjust my front lines over here with the pikemen. Unfortunately, some of my own pikemen took casualties in my traps. Not a big deal. It's a little bit of a tight space because the deployment zone is quite small in this settlement, but the main thing is I'm gonna try to hold out over here. We have a couple of hoplite units as well, and we are gonna form up over here just in case the enemy tries to attack us from this side. So we're protecting our vulnerable flanks. We have our missile units that are focusing their fire on the enemy missile cavalry, and this is where the Achaemenid Empire is really devastating. You can see that missile cavalry over there, 47 armor. That's insane. None of our cavalry has that much amount of armor. Alexander himself on that left flank, as well as of course some of the other Thessalian cavalry on the right flank, sallying out of the settlement in the hopes of trying to find a weakness over here. Unfortunately, a lot of these enemy units have missiles, which means they're not going to be too eager to engage us really quickly, and some of our phalangite units will have to take the brunt of this damage and quite a lot of casualties over here. You can see that our other phalangite units are also lined up. One of the main reasons I hate, the Achaemenid armies is because a lot of their units, while they have melee capabilities which aren't that great, they have missiles as well. They have bows that they can use, especially the Sparabara, and what that does is it significantly softens your troops before the engagement, which is rather unfortunate, unless of course you fight aggressively. But we are on the defensive, we are vastly outnumbered. There's no chance for me to fight this battle very aggressively, so what I'm trying to do is just try to isolate, maneuver and attack weaker enemy units. As I can see over here, we have an archer unit that is kind of isolated from the spear unit. The real danger over here is this medium spear unit, but if I manage to get a charge off on the archer unit as well as the missile cavalry, that's going to be for the best, of course. And that is exactly what we're going to try to do. Meanwhile, some of the Lydian reinforcements are also approaching the battle, so that is rather unfortunate. What I'm going to try to do is try to encircle them and hit them over here, try to pin down some of those cavalry units, prevent them from escaping. Unfortunately, they're too fast for us, and right now you can see why using our missile troops on enemy missile cavalry is very important. But realizing I can't catch them, quickly redirect my forces to break this enemy cavalry, and of course that's going to be great. We are pulling up some of our other cavalry away from this medium spearmen. Meanwhile, you can see some of these Lydian troops slowly trickle into the battle. We even have some of the Cappadocian reinforcements trickle into the battle. A lot of these cavalry units, unfortunately, missile cavalry, they're going to do a number on our pikemen over here, unfortunately, including Polyperchon, who's going to take the bulk of the damage. As you can see, they all focus firing him, but the main thing over here is to break the enemy so that we can use some of our other pikemen to reinforce what clearly seems to be the side of the battlefield in which most of the enemy army is going to be present. So we managed to do that by cycle charging over here. Still over here, we're trying to maneuver and catch up to enemy cavalry and try to wipe them out from the field of battle. What we really want to do is get rid of as many cavalry units as we can, gain a cavalry superiority, and then we can begin some cycle charges over here if we can possibly do so. However, over here you can see that my unit's a little bit bold charging into these units, but they get a pretty massive charge because they're faced the wrong way, and now they're getting charged from the front. They absolutely crush them. And noticing that some of the retreating cavalry has reformed and come back into the battle, I charge Alexander right into the fray. You can see it's absolutely chaotic over here. There's no semblance of formation whatsoever, but we are actually doing a very great service for this battle by getting rid of all of these extra straggler units, freeing up our units over here to join the main fighting over here. However, speaking of the fighting over here, you can start to see that some of these units starting to take a little bit of casualties, unfortunately. However, on this side where our hoplite units are, they're doing quite well against this enemy cavalry. There's nothing much they can do against a wall of spears, so they are going to be quickly dispatched. However, over here now the main focus is to deal with the remainder of this Lydian army, and after that we can focus on helping our troops over here. So for now I'm just biding my time with these pikemen, and they should do just fine in that regard. Until of course I can deal with these units. They do have a couple of missile units which I want to get rid of, including this missile cavalry, but in between them of course they have a support of melee troops, so as long as they are not isolated, it's not a good idea to charge at them. So right now you can see that I'm starting to do some maneuvering because I'm trying to pin them down on multiple sides in order to quickly dispatch of them, especially this missile cavalry unit, which will be quite difficult for me to catch up with. They have a speed of 7, which is equal to the speed that I have. In fact, my speed is 8, but it's not that significantly faster, which means giving chase to these units is not going to be that easy. However, yeah, we're just waiting a little bit. I mean, this battle is going to take a while. It's 12-minute long battle, and of course a lot more units just slowly keep trickling down into the battlefield. But for now we're just going to keep watching, and of course I will fast forward into the future where I feel it's necessary. But for now we're going to keep watching how I execute this isolation tactics and quickly try to dispatch some of the missile units. Unfortunately, a lot of their melee units are going to be hurling their precursor javelins against my own cavalry units. Not the best thing to do. And noticing this cavalry is really close, I managed to pin it down, which is great news for us. We're going to try to break this cavalry before some of the spearmen catch up to us. Although they are losing decisively, they are not routing from the field of battle. They have pretty good armor at 41, so they are going to be taking losses a little bit slowly. But thankfully for me, I do initiate that war cry, and now I'm giving chase to them so that they break, and with that they're completely shattered, and it's time to move all of my cavalry away from these spear units. As cavalry, as you can tell so far in this battle, have been quite the most important or decisive units that we can have, and if we actually lose our cavalry, then we can kind of lose the battle as well. Meanwhile, not quite sure what to do with my Agrianians. They're not really good at frontline troops, but eventually I do decide. Initially the idea was to kind of flank over here, but then I realized with that constant source of enemies trickling down from that side, I'm never going to be able to get a clean flank without, of course, risking being flanked myself. So I eventually decide to move them up over here and flank the enemy from this side instead. But for now, what we are going to try to do is dispatch some of these units. Of course, they are being charged at from multiple sides, which is really good against light spearmen. Even though they can counter cavalry, it's just how you deal with them is what matters, and how you get rid of them, if you charge at them from multiple sides. So that is what we're trying to do. We're going to try to prevent this battle dragging out for much longer than necessary, because the more we drag it out, the more casualties our units over here are going to take. As you can see, Polyperchon is down to 50% of his men, and he's still continuing to take a lot of missile fire, which is rather unfortunate. And you can see some of my pikemen in the original front line are starting to move towards that same direction to kind of reinforce this line over here. However, over here with the Lydian army, once again with those charges from all sides against the spear unit, is going to completely shatter them. They're going to lose morale very quickly and a lot of men very quickly, so that's looking really great for us. Some of the units over here, our hoplite units, also doing quite well. You have a couple of these units. I really want them to engage our hoplites so that I can use some of our cavalry to attack over there. And this is the point in the battle where I start to move my cavalry in anticipation, try to get a better point of attack or an avenue of attack against the enemy but unfortunately I'm not able to do so. Over here, this is where I decide, okay, it's time to now rear charge some of these units once they get engaged. Let's just keep watching the battle for a short time until, of course, I can perform that rear charge, and then, of course, I'm going to forward into the future when I can do so myself. Now, I notice some of these melee units are moving towards, of course, my pike units. So I initiate the charge against the spearmen, and they are going to be able to completely devastate the spear unit, completely breaking it off quickly, and that is absolutely great news. We're going to keep moving our cavalry back. However, with that, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward into the future, and I will see you all then. Alright, there you have it. A little bit into the future, we are charging this medium spear unit on all sides. It manages to get its spear downs in the nick of time, but it's going to be charged by Alexander himself on the rear. As such, is going to be quickly routed. So there you have it. We quickly dispatch yet another unit. For the most part, these units have been cleared, so I eventually decide to form them up over here to protect this path, because I don't think any more units are going to come in this direction. So for the most part, I am going to try my level best to kind of blob up all of the enemy units in this region, and then even use my Agranians to rear charge them. Over here you can see many of the enemy units still trickling into the battle. They are actually running, and they're already tired, many of them, which is actually great, because that means by the time they actually get to my front lines, they're going to be exhausted, which is going to work out very heavily in our favor, of course. However, once again over here, I notice the weaker side of my phalanx is getting a little bit flanked, and they have taken quite a bit of casualties. Meanwhile, I've moved up a second row of phalanx. As you can see, we have quite a lot of phalanx units over here, but noticing that these melee units can break this far right side of my phalangite front line that's defending the entrance to the city, I move my cavalry in order to break their morale, and there you have it. My cavalry is pretty tired. They're not going to be fast, but they're still going to be very impactful on the charge over there, especially as far as morale is concerned. And there you have it. You have broken a couple of those units, which means we have kind of eased the tension on our right flank. So nothing much else to showcase over there. You can start to see some of the enemy units waver, but they don't outright break. They just are losing as far as their morale is concerned. So I'm going to once again fast forward this battle, because we're going to wait for all of these units to get into the battle. There's nothing much to showcase over here. As you can see from this point, it's very easy for me to go ahead and win the battle. There's nothing much else. It's all about just waiting for as much of the enemy units to engage my front lines, after which I can perform my flanking maneuvers. If I decide to perform my flanking maneuvers now, then the reinforcements will pin down my cavalry, which I absolutely do not want, considering that a lot of them are actually spear units. And when it comes to spear units, we did manage to defeat some of these lighter spear units with our cavalry, but that's because we took the initiative. We charged at them from all directions. However, if you're already engaged in a melee and this spear unit falls upon your cavalry, you are going to take some pretty significant losses. So it's all about the management, guys. Over here we have Alexander and of course his companion cavalry. We're going to run down the enemy archers, and as you can see, completely full unit, but just because of that fear ability, they are already wavering. So all it takes is just a slight touch, and they will completely break from the field of battle. So there you have it. That slight touch. They still haven't taken any losses, guys, and they're completely shattered. Meanwhile, this other missile unit has also completely shattered, and we're going to pull out our cavalry real quick so that we don't get caught by these spear units. Meanwhile, some of our other cavalry is going to assist our cavalry over here. We're going to try to pick off some of the units that are slowly making its way, especially the cavalry unit. Pretty much the same tactic again and again, where we are trying to numerically overwhelm the enemy and attack at it from all directions, thereby breaking its morale. And I'm actually going to showcase it over here before I forward into the far future, where we're just about to win the battle, because there's nothing much else to do. We're just waiting to see all of these units build up over there. And as you can see, our hoplite units, as promised, we kind of reinforce our right hand side flank. But before we talk more about what's going on over there, a quick look at how I dispatch some of these units over here. You can see this isolated cavalry units trying to make a charge for my unit, and that's where I'm going to try to counter charge at it from its sides, and if it turns around to face me, I can just charge with these cavalry units. So it's really a difficult situation for them. And there you have it. They're not changing direction, so we're going to begin our charge. We're going to take a little bit of losses on the charge, but more importantly, since they are medium shock cavalry, they're going to take a lot of charges. And there you have it. You have Alexander himself getting into the battle, attacking over here, big damage, quickly managed to break that cavalry. So it's not that difficult, especially with Macedonian shock cavalry being this amazing at their shock damage. However, with that, let's just go ahead, fast forward into the future, and I will see you guys then. Alright, welcome to the future. As you can see, we are still trying to deal with some of the enemy cavalry units that are making their way into the battle. Most of the enemy units are engaged with our pike units. We've managed to kind of stabilize over here. In fact, even our hoplite units are keeping them at bay, preventing them from attacking some of these weaker flanks. We have a couple of Agrianian axemen over here that are ready to engage the enemy, but I noticed that an enemy unit is charging at me, so I quickly order them to counter charge, and that's exactly what's happening over here. Meanwhile, we've dispatched yet another cavalry unit by charging at it from all sides, so there's not much else the enemy can do about that. What we are going to do is, since we have dealt with almost all of the enemy cavalry units and we have some cavalry units that are going to enter into the battlefield, we're not going to focus too much on that. We're going to try to break as much of the enemy army that's already engaged over here before the cavalry can get into the battle. And by the time the cavalry actually gets into the battle, we're going to pull out all of our cavalry and leave them to deal with our pikemen. But as you can see, these units are starting to waver. We're going to charge into these units, but of course with our fear ability, they're already broken. We're going to keep putting the pressure on most of these units. As you can see, more and more of them are wavering. If we're able to break this, then we have a significant advantage. All that left is enemy cavalry units, and they cannot really deal with, of course, our pikemen. And you can see this reinforcing skirmisher units already wavering. That's absolutely crazy. And there you have it. You have our massive final charge with our cavalry, completely smashing the enemy lines. We're actually breaking the entire enemy army, and with that we have won a very crucial advantage, our very first heroic victory of the series, guys. Absolutely stoked about it. And more importantly, you know, I do want to mention that although we won very decisively, heroically in fact, we took a lot less casualties than I had anticipated, but we also didn't manage to kill a vast majority of the enemy army, so they're still at large. As you can see, most of the reinforcements actually did not even participate in the battle, so they are going to be pretty much intact after the battle. And although, you know, I have managed to secure quite a decisive victory, heroic victory over here, I am not entirely too pleased with the fact that a lot of the enemy units are going to escape completely unscathed by the battle, and this is something you would want and also not want at the same time. However, with that, I'm going to go ahead, end the battle, and I will see you all back in the campaign. Alright, with that, we have won a significant victory over here. We haven't lost that many troops, but we haven't been able to kill off as many troops as well, so that is rather unfortunate. What we are going to do is we are going to enslave the captives this time, try to help our economy a little bit by boosting it. It has made their position a little bit weaker. I could go ahead and wipe out their armies, but I'm not inclined to do that. I want them to basically be stuck in this over here. It's pretty high, so I might as well just take some money. And pretty much the next turn now, and what we are really going to discover here is where that Achaemenid army actually is. It's positioned over here, so we're going to keep a close eye out for that. Meanwhile, just move our spy a little bit closer to the Gordian Knot, have a little bit of line of sight of what's going on over here. Now, the major advantage of this region over here at the Gordian area is that there is a river which actually prevents allied armies from easily crossing into Pessinous, so that will kind of slow down the pouring of Achaemenid troops towards us. However, it's not going to be as decisive in any way, shape or form. Meanwhile, over here, quick look to see we can upgrade some buildings, so let's go ahead and do that. Quick look to see over here, go ahead, dismantle that building, build a barracks over there, and I want to build a local agora. Is actually pretty good, but this one actually consumes food. It does give me some garrisons. This one over here just affects the growth per turn and unlocks a couple of garrisons, Greek hoplite and Greek militia, which is kind of nice, to be honest. So I think that's what we're gonna go for, or we could actually go for food, which is really, really important, guys. Wow, both of them gives +4 food, actually. Never really noticed that. Over here, these armies, they're significantly weakened, I should say, which means we could potentially attack them. And I might actually be inclined to do so because I want to kind of free up the area over here so that I can move across. So tell you what, I'm actually just going to move Alexander a little bit too close. And then we're going to attack over here. Alright, they're going to stand their ground, surprisingly. We're going to auto-resolve this one. And we are going to enslave the captives once more. Unfortunately, that's 2 new armies that have been defeated. So that's going to make things difficult. But it was really important for us to do that. The reason being is that we can now garrison Nicomedia over here with, of course, our Phalangite type units. Which also gives us the important ability to kind of free up Alexander, which is what we need. And of course we are going to be defending over here with Cassandros in Pessinous, and he has leveled up, which is great. We can get the bonus for all Hellenic units as well as the Hellenic unit upkeep, which is really good, and the Persian invaders as well. Alexander has also leveled up, but the danger over here is that, of course, this Achaemenid army is going to be able to attack us, and we do not have a lot of population class to replenish, as I recollect. So instead, what we are going to do with Alexander, because of that auto-resolve, the auto-resolve is just horrible in this game, but that Achaemenid army could get across towards us, which is a little bit problematic, and we do not want to take away the replenishment capabilities from, of course, Cassandros, who we will need to eventually improve. So what we could do is actually move Alexander all the way back towards Pergamon, which means we can start to move this guy all the way. And what about this character? He cannot really reach us, so I think we can in fact even go in a patrol stance with Alexander. It's a little bit sketchy over there. This Achaemenid army could attack me, and I don't mind if he does, because what that will actually do is weaken his position over here to protect side. Meanwhile, this guy over here is what I want to really focus on. We're going to get rid of all those extra units, and we're going to go ahead and transfer some of them over, in fact all of them over as possible, into this army over here, and go ahead and disband Hephaestion once again. And we're going to re-establish him over here in Pelup. As you can see, the public order is back on the decline, which is rather unfortunate. And I think with that, we are pretty much done with this turn. Nothing much else left to do, just to sit and wait and see what happens over here with the Achaemenid armies. We've managed to gain quite a significant foothold in Anatolia. However, let's go ahead, end the turn, and I will see you all in the next turn. Alright, welcome to the next turn. Characters have leveled up, so let's actually go ahead and improve the abilities. We're going to focus on Strategic Genius, improving Valor, of course, to help Alexander even improve a little bit more. Meanwhile, this army over here is a little bit concerning because he's going to be eating away at the supplies over here. But I'm not too concerned. I think we're quite secure in Nicomedia, to be honest. Which kind of means I have to transfer over some troops over here. The real priority, of course, it will be to kind of defend Pessinous, and then we can move this guy back up. So we've kind of transferred over some of those troops. We will also be able to get some of our unique units over here. The Achaemenid army, as anticipated, has moved towards Ephesus. What this means is that we could absolutely crush them. We don't have the complete replenishment in order to do so, and they could actually march towards Pergamon. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to deploy myself over here in Ephesus kind of try to replenish. Should take about a turn for us to replenish, and then we're going to go ahead and attack them, but that will have to wait until the next episode, because of course we have spent quite a lot of time in this episode gaining a foothold in Anatolia. I should say so. We're looking quite successful. Managed to conquer about 4 settlements in the western half of Anatolia. Of course, our economy is starting to look a little bit better. Meanwhile, unfortunately, our issue over here is of course going to be our supplies. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn off the taxation over here. Our public order is not looking too good. We're going to dismantle these food generation buildings. Unfortunately, that brings our food situation a little bit on the low. Go ahead, build up that supply pit over there so that we can supply our future offensives into Anatolia. A supply pit actually gives you supplies for 3 regions regardless of the local supplies. So as you can see over there, it does give the supply line of 3 regions. At the bottom of that tooltip you see the +3 regions. What that means is that if you have a supply pit in Pergamon, and as long as the supplies in Pergamon is good, then it will extend its supplies for 3 adjacent regions. So if we have to talk about it, it can supply Nicomedia, it can supply all the way to Sinope and even Amasea. It can even work its way down southward into Ephesus, Pessinous and Side, and of course Ephesus, Pessinous and the Gordian area over here. So pretty much we have all of these regions under our supply depot over there. So it doesn't really matter how many enemy armies are in the region. As you can see, a massive conglomeration over there of enemy armies. What they'll end up doing is they'll pretty much end up attritioning the hell out of each other. As you can see, the supplies in the Gordian are being tanked at -80, which means in about 4 to 5 turns they will be running out of supplies in this region, which is absolutely amazing for us. But they are also supplied by a supply depot, so they are going to be able to stay in this area for a long time. But what that will do is it'll kind of deplete the supplies of their allies who do not have that supply chain. As you can see over here in the bottom right hand corner, they are being supplied by a supply depot, and if we can find that supply depot, perhaps even cut them off, then we can pretty much attrition the hell out of these armies over here. Apart from that, of course, as you can see, we are looking quite good, but what we want to do is we want to prioritize on our public order over here in this province, and we're going to get our dignitary out of there, and we're going to move him towards Anatolia or Ionia, in preparation of course of culturally converting Side in the future, which is what we would want to do. Of course, in the next episode we're going to begin with attacking this army over here of the Achaemenids directly, and then we're going to try to push our advantage towards Side. Hopefully in that time we should have a little bit of a population replenishment over here, and of course we are building some food generation buildings as well over here. Couple of turns we will get access to some of the unique units over here, an extra Hyphistoi, as well as of course our Chalka Speedes. I always butcher that term, Hypapistai. It's a real tongue twister, guys. Apart from that, we are still researching to set prices so that we can improve our economy. Our economy treasury is looking pretty good. Our overall economy is not looking that great in terms of net income per turn, but that's because we have significantly increased our army size. Meanwhile, Pergamon, the garrison is looking pretty decent, and the more time this army tries to take out Pergamon, which seems like they are going to be taking that amount of time to do so, the better it's going to be for us, because then we can pretty much just rely on the garrison of Pergamon to hold out. That being said, I think we might as well just try to upgrade Pergamon. There's no real need. It might actually eat away at our food supplies, but I'm okay with that, because you know, getting a upgrade of garrison gives us a little bit more access to hoplite units, and we can eventually deal with that threat over there. But all in all, a very good episode, if I should say so myself. We managed to gain a very strong position, be a little bit more explosive. In about 4 to 5 turns we have actually conquered quite a significant portion despite being heavily outnumbered, and that uphill battle is only going to get steeper as we progress along into the future episodes. However, with that, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you liked the video, then like the video, and don't forget to subscribe if you are interested for more. Peace and love.